the 21st of September, 2013, men walked into the Westgate shopping mall, and they proceeded to kill 69 people and injure about 170 people. That was news that was going to take over the news cycles for days to. It's a particular date for me because, for me, it marks a coat-hanger moment in my relationship with my father. You see, my younger sister, Annie, and I worked at the Westgate. And a lot of my memories about that particular event are very hugely tied to my father. But to tell you that story, let me tell you about my dad. My father was growing up in the 50s and the 60s, so around the time when the colonial rule was very heavy still in Kenya. His parents had had an acrimonious split, and so he found himself with his mom and his younger siblings leaving Nyeri and going to live in Pasenga. And it was a very hard life for them. My grandmother worked as a laborer in the homes of the wealthy in Pasenga, and so she worked the field, and my dad worked with her. And he would do everything that would get him some money or some food. My dad worked in the farm. He was a tout. He was a cook. He did anything. And he's the kind of person who, in retrospect, I see that he literally not only pulled up himself and his family up by the bootstraps, but he also did that for the community around him. So I grew up in the house where people would always come home and say, hey, you know, your father gave me my first job, bought me my first shoe, really helped us. That's the kind of dad that I grew up around. And you can imagine growing in that household. The one thing that I always wanted is his, acceptance and approval and validation. I grew up in the house of a very strong father. So fast forward that to 2012. My father and I had a horrible disagreement. And after that, we would proceed not to talk for many months. Now, to kind of get over it, I decided at some point in August of 2013 that I was going to take this big trip. I was going to Europe, and I was going to celebrate life. Now, I love to travel. And in my family, when we travel, we go home, we tell our parents about it, we tell my mom and my dad about it, and they're wonderful. They pray for us. They pray for Johnny Mercies. They want to hear where you're going, all of that cool stuff. My dad or my mom will always give us some money to buy tea, wherever you're going. Even if it's not a lot of money, but you'll have money for tea. It's a beautiful gesture. So you can imagine me planning this wonderful trip. I'm going to go to Europe. I'm going to be there for 6 weeks and tell my dad that. It was really difficult for me. So I travel. I go to the UK. I go to France. I go down to Italy. And we're sitting here in Rome, facing the Colosseum. And I'm my friend Julia. And I love making her laugh. We're talking. We're having a good time. And she looks at me and goes, Shaz, what about your father? You don't talk about your father. And I'm like, how am I going to tell you that I've not talked to him? Maybe for about 18 months. And I get so emotional. I'm crying into my glass of wine. Like you can see the level go up. And I cry. And then I drink all of the wine. And I have a glass of wine. And then we go tour the Colosseum, and it's wonderful. The day after that, I come back home. And my mom tells me, hey, your dad has been asking about you. We're having ambuzi on Saturday. It's like a Thursday. We're having ambuzi on Saturday, and Daddy said he'd like to see you at home. Okay. Haven't spoken to my dad in a while. And I cannot talk about my father without also talking about my mother. Because where my dad is this very strong personality, he's choleric, he gets things done. He is fire. He is the sun, literally, S-U-N, sun. My mom is like the moon. When you think of that relationship, that's how I feel about my parents. Because especially in this time which was very dark and very difficult for me, Mommy helped us to still have some sort of relationship with him. And she would go between us. And she made a very difficult time a bit lighter. In those dark months, she was the moonlight to these very dark nights. And so when my mom says, hey, Daddy says he wants to see you, come home for the mbuzi, I go because it's Mom. That's special to me. So I mentally get ready for it, and Saturday comes, and I psych up for it because I don't know what to expect. Now, in my family, when we have a new baby in the family, my dad will always slaughter a very fat lamb, and he'll make a big fanfare about it. So my dad will slaughter a lamb, and he'll cut the fattest piece of meat and feed that to the baby and say a beautiful prayer of blessing and prosperity over the child. And then my mom will put the child's hand, tiny baby, into a pot of grain, and she'll pray for prosperity and favor. And my favorite part, my parents will take a big fat wad of cash, and brown notes, like this, and they'll put it in the baby's hand so that the baby has shopping money. And I love it. I love it. I don't have babies, but I want to have babies just so they can have that from my parents. I really, really do. So that's what we're going to do this Saturday. My sister Terry has just had a baby, fresh baby. We're going to do the nyama choma. Mommy says, Daddy wants to see you at home. And I want to go, but I'm scared. Because I also grew up hearing about generational curses and all of those things. So I'm like, oh, what if I go home and then there's a showdown and then. So I get home on the Saturday and I drive and I can see my dad's car. So I tell the askari, "I gate usifunge. Don't close this gate. Leave it open." And I drive my car, and then I turn around to face the gate. I leave my key in the ignition, and I leave the car open. So this is my plan. If there's a showdown, I'm going, because I don't want to get myself in a situation that I might regret. Because at the end of the day, this is my dad, right? So I get home, I park the car, I go, and I sit in the kitchen, and I can hear my dad coming down the stairs. And from the kitchen where I'm sitting, I can see him coming. You see the legs and then the body, and I'm playing with my nephews and nieces, and I'm holding them. And the more he comes downstairs, I'm holding them closer and closer and closer. And in my family, when an older person walks into the room, you give them a seat, you give them salams. And I'm sitting here like a statue. I can't move. I don't know what's going to happen. And my dad clocks me, and he comes down the stairs, and he comes to me, he puts the kids aside, and he stands me up, and he hugs me, and he says, "Mommy." So my dad also calls us Mommy, even if I'm not called for his mom. He says, "Mommy, we've had too long a time not speaking to each other. So glad you came for this nyama choma. I'm so happy to see you. Let's go eat nyama choma." That's exactly what happens. We eat nyama choma, and it's a wonderful event. Exactly a week after that, we're at the Westgate, and the terrorists come into the mall. I'm with my sister Annie, and Annie wanted to run out of the mall when they came in. And I grab Annie's hand and I say, "No, we're going to hide. We're going to see what's happening. We're going to figure it out." And we're hiding. We run to the back of the Nakumat. I don't know if you remember the layout of it. And there's a bookstop section. So we're hiding below children's books. And I'm not kidding you, the shelf is this high. And in 5 seconds, we're not 2 of us, we're 10, all hiding. And not really hiding because it's a bookshelf. And, any. And the shooting, and it's the scariest sound I've ever heard. I never thought I could hear a sound like that or be that scared in my life. And so I start thinking of who I need to call, and the first person I think of calling is my dad. So Annie, at this time, my sister had texted Terry, my older sister, told her what's happening. So obviously Terry had spoken to my dad. So I call him, and he literally picks it up within the first ring. And I'm trying to tell him, "Daddy, we're at Westgate." and this is what's happening. And he says, Mommy, I'm praying for you, and everything's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And then he goes to something else, but the shooting starts. So I can't say anything, and I'm just holding the phone. But he can hear what's happening around us. Now, let me tell you something else about my dad. On the 23rd of March, 1983, my dad, he was a pilot among many things, Kikuyu businessman. And true, he had a small fleet of aircraft, and he was flying in the Nyahururu area, and something happened. He got engine failure. He saw that he had to crash land. And he tells us the prayer that he prayed that day as he was crash landing was, God, this is not my time. I have a wife and children now. I want to have dinner with them tonight. And that's exactly what happened. He crash landed into the forest, buffalo, Nini, and he was home that night having dinner with us. So that's my dad. So my dad tells me, Mommy, I'm praying for you. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to get out okay. So my dad told me it's going to be fine, right? The shooting starts. We're there for hours. The next person I tried to call was my mom, but they walked into the nakumat where we were hiding. And so I couldn't talk. We just cut the phone and be there for a few hours. So Annie and I are trying to figure out when is the best time to get out of this situation. And I figured out, so I'm an interior designer by trade, by work, and I know a couple of things about a supermarket design. The cool room always has access to an exit out of wherever it is. It's well designed. So you can think about the malls, the supermarkets you go to. So I tell Annie, we need to find the cool room and we need to get out of this place. And we remove our shoes and we're hiding and crouching and stepping on people's shoes, on blood, on food. It was horrible. It was a horrible scene. And eventually, we make it out of the supermarket. We make it to the cold room. We make it to the store. And we're making our way out of Westgate. And there's obviously a few of us who've figured out this is the time to go. The shoot died down enough. And we're literally an exodus of people leaving Westgate. So you're just seeing people's backs. And we're walking through, trying to run out of this place. And as we're leaving, I see this person walking towards Westgate. And I look at Annie and I'm like, Annie, that's Dad. And it was my dad. He had found a way to come through. And literally at the time as we were leaving, he was walking into the Westgate Mall because his daughters were there. And he had to come and find them. That's my